So today we're going to see if we can beat Elden Ring only using Frenzied Flame. This means I can only use weapons, incantations, and summons that deals madness damage. But before we get into that, you guys let me know in the last video that I used the Death's Poker incorrectly. So let's fix that. Let's see. So this and then... Oh, it follows. Oh, I can see why this is broken. Oh, hold on. I got you guys. Alright, now before we get into the actual run, leave a like for that, and make sure to subscribe while you're down there. I'd really appreciate it. So we select the Confessor class due to its high starting faith, good strength, and dexterity. Run past the Grafted Scion and jump off the cliff. Wake up in Limgrave, head our way over to Melina for Torrent. Now that we have Torrent, it was time to make our way over to Liurnia, to the Church of Inhibition. This is where Vyke invades us, and Vyke has the only weapon in the game that deals madness build-up on hit. So we lure him over to this cliffside, sacrifice ourselves, and Gravity makes quick work of him gifting us our weapon for the run, Vyke's War Spear. Us sacrificing ourselves for the kill will become a theme throughout this run. Now we have the spear, but unfortunately don't have the required 16 strength, 20 dex, and 18 faith to wield it. So we make our way over to Caelid, head over to the bridge where the Knight's Cavalry spawns, and stand right here so the cavalry will lunge at us, kill us, and Gravity will do the rest. Now we have the required stats to use our weapon. Now it's time to progress the only quest that we'll be completing in this video, Hiatus. To do this, we have to find the dead body of Irina in the Weeping Peninsula. Once we do that, she will appear in Liurnia. We talk to her, grab her a Shabriri grape, feed it to her, then she moves on. We find her again by these ruins, talk to her, grab a grape, and these 2 fingers talismans, which give us extra faith while we're here. Feed her the grape, make a quick pit stop to grab the Flame of Frenzy incantation. Alright, back to grape picking. We head over to the shack and proceed to get invaded by Edgar the Revenger. We use Frenzied Flame to our advantage to give him madness and proceed to poke him to death. It is rather unfortunate that we can only give madness to invaders or other NPCs, so anytime I have the chance, I will be abusing madness. She rewards us with a grape, which we then use to feed her again. She moves on for the last time to the Bellum Church. This time she wants the fingerprint grape, which we got from killing Vyke, so we simply feed it to her. We will see her again, but that's it for now. We head over to the Inhibition Church to kill this beetle that is holding the Frenzied Burst incantation. We then make our way over to the Frenzied Tower to pick up the Howl of Shabriri, one of the only 2 buffs that we will have access to throughout this run. After acquiring that, we head over to the Carrion Manor and make our way over to the Ghost Loretta fight. But I don't want to fight her. I just want her runes. So I run over to this corner, save and quit, and poof, now that we're back, she's gone. And she won't fight back, as she doesn't know we're in the arena, and I can easily kill her for some free runes. It's surprising that something like this is still in the game after all this time, but it is what it is. After beating on her idle body for the 10k runes, we make our way over to EG to purchase some somber smithing stones. And yes, I did abuse a glitch because I was too lazy to grab stones for myself. We then make our way over to the Margit fight, enter the arena, and start spamming him with some Frenzied Bursts. It has a good range and some good damage. I didn't realize this at the time, but it took a good chunk of FP, and I only had 2 FP pots equipped. I then run to the other side of the arena and start hitting some more Frenzied Bursts on him. After that, I hit him with the Flame of Frenzy and run out of FP. Now we're all up to melee, and to be honest, I kinda suck at the Margit fight. It's one of the few fights that I have the least amount of experience in, because, fun fact, my first ever playthrough, I did exactly what I did in the Scarlet Rot video, and I just used the Rot Dog to kill Margit. So I didn't really have to fight him. This fight goes down to the wire as I was on my last HP pot, but we managed to pull it off, killing Margit and granting us the Talisman Pouch. Now that Margit was dead, it was time for us to take on Godric. This time I give myself some more FP pots. We start out by hitting him with some more Frenzied Bursts until he makes his way over to me. Then I distance myself and hit him with some more. When he tries to slam on me, I counter with a Frenzy Flame Thrust. This move looks so cool and is always super fun to do. As he's phase shifting, I hit him with the Flame of Frenzy. This is probably the best Frenzy incantation, as it has pretty good spread, good damage, and really good poise damage. And if you can control it just right, you can just deal so much damage. I back up and use some Frenzy Flame Bursts, almost jump over the Fire Breath. That would have been badass, but unfortunately I couldn't. He then goes for the jump attack, and every time he does this, I want to use my own jump attack to counter him. I then run to the other side of the arena and hit him with Frenzied Burst, and now I was totally out of FP. Now I was just down to getting in there and poking him to death and managing to do just that and defeat Godric the Grafted. After defeating Godric, I make my way over to the Third Church of America and pick up the Wondrous Physic, and while I'm here, I stop by the fort and pick up the Medallion Half. I then slaughter some Ghost Turtles to get a Memory Stone so I can hold more incantations. Then it was time to fight the erdtree's avatar. These guys are one of the few enemies in the game that are actually weak to fire, and if you didn't know, Frenzied Flame is, fire damage. I killed this one for the Crimson Burst bubble tier, then go over and pick up the Faith Knot crystal tier, which will help me be able to use the Howl of Subribi sooner. And then head back to Limgrave, go pick up the erdtree's favor, TP over to Caelid and grab the other half of the Dectus. Now it was time to kill Mommy Grail, but this is gonna take a while, as I don't have access to bleed or any other status effect that will deal damage to her. So I just stood here and hit her for about 20 or so minutes until she died, and I got my not so free runes. Once we were done with that painstaking journey, I make our way over to the Red Wolf of Radagon. We buff ourselves with Howl of Subribi before we enter, start firing off some Frenzied Bursts to deal some big damage. I then hit Frenzy Flame Thrust and deal a lot of damage in the process, but I feel like it's worth to take these trades. We then get him low enough to where I can go in for a final poke and finish the Red Wolf of Radagon. Before we take on Renala, we go to the bottom of the academy to fight the Abductor. It sucks us in and spits us out over in the Volcano Manor. Then we head over to this building that has some crazed Albernics. Now I kill them over and over and over again. I think this process took me about 3 hours, but after all that grinding, we get this item that is 0.50% drop rate, the Black Dumpling Helmet. Now what this helmet does is if we give ourselves Madness, for a whole minute after we get Madness, we gain a 10% damage buff. We then head over to Caelid to fight the Putrid Avatar. Like I mentioned earlier, the avatars are weak to fire, so this fight wasn't super difficult. I used the buffs available to me to my advantage, and then deal a huge amount of damage, and we kill this avatar or the Flame Shrouding Cracked tier, which boosts fired attacks by 20% for 3 minutes after consumed. After that, we pick up some Somber Smithing Stones and level up our spear to +7. Now it was time for Renala. This first phase is slow as usual. We just go around poking the glowing children. Then when Renala is down, we use the Flame of Frenzy to deal a good amount of damage. We repeat this cycle until it was time for phase 2. We make our way behind her and buff ourselves, then we hit her with a couple of running charges with our spear, and this does some good damage. Because she's constantly attacking, it makes it a bit harder to get off our normal incantations, so for the most part, we'll be relying on our spirit here to do most of the damage. As I do try to get off the Flame of Frenzy a couple of times, but every time I'm interrupted by her attacking me, so I just can't get the attack off. So I just keep charging at her, and once she gets really low, I get off 2 final pokes and finish Renala. Then we make our way over to Fort Lade to pick up the Fire Scorpion Charm. This charm increases our fire damage by 12%, but increases damage taken by 10%, so we will be using this situationally. Now it was time to take on the Draconic Tree Sentinel. This one took me a while because a lot of his attacks, if I get caught in, they just one-shot me, but we power through. I start off at a distance, hitting him with the Frenzied Burst until he gains aggro, which does a good chunk of his HP. Then from there, I go for the Frenzy Flame Thrust and jump attacks whenever I get the chance, because I'm trying to break his poise as soon as possible, which will help me a lot, which I eventually pull off. And when he is phase shifting in his lightning form, I get off a Flame of Frenzy, which does massive poise damage, which allows me to break his poise very easily with just a couple more jump attacks. I then use Flame of Frenzy again while his poise is broken, go for some more jump attacks, break his poise, and then finish him off with the Flame of Frenzy. We then make our way up to the capital until we reach Goldfree. As he was walking towards us, we got off some Frenzied Bursts for some nice chip. Then we sacrificed some of our HP for our Frenzied Flame Thrust. Now this fight doesn't have a whole lot of openings for my incantations, so for the most part this is just going to be a straight up duel where we go back and forth until I break his poise, allowing me to get off a nice Flame of Frenzy, which does some huge damage. I then go for a risky Frenzy Flame Thrust, which pays off, and I end up poking Godfrey to death, which gives me my last Talisman pouch. Now before we fight Morgott, I head down to the sewers. This is where the only summon that we are allowed to use is located, the Nomad Ashes. This summon deals madness damage. After scooping it up, I then head over to Moog's arena, snatch the erdtree's favor +1 from him, and run away. We then head over to the Celia Crystal Tunnel and pick up the Faithful's Canvas Talisman, which raises the potency of incantations by 4%, onto Morgott. Now this fight was pretty difficult because Morgott is very aggressive and a fast-paced boss, which I struggle to deal with this build, as a lot of the incantations have a charge up animation before I can attack, and the spear isn't the fastest weapon in the game as is. We buff ourselves outside of the fog gate, then once we enter we summon our little nomad buddy and immediately start firing off Frenzied Burst, as they were doing a good 700 damage per hit, and we actually cause him into doing his sword attack, which buys us some more time to go for some more bursts. He then finally gets over to us, and I want him to aggro a little nomad buddy, so I run away, but he doesn't end up aggroing him right away, so I just get off some more bursts, causing him to phase shift. Then he gets aggroed to the nomad finally, allowing us to get even more bursts off. We've dealt a majority of his HP without even having to get in contact with him, which is amazing. We then kite him to the other side of the arena and send off another burst. I then decide to go for a Frenzy Flame Thrust and take the trade. He then goes for the swords again, allowing me to smack him up a little bit, and then he gets super aggressive. I go for Frenzy Flame Thrust. Morgott kills me, but the flame it leaves on the ground is enough to kill Morgott. And boom, we've defeated Morgott, and it spawns his body in the center, which I thought was pretty neat. Now that Morgott was dead, we head down into the sewers to take on Moog. Moog is gatekeeping our seal, which we need to buff our Frenzy Flame attacks. We then buff ourselves outside of his arena and make our way in. Now sewer Moog doesn't take a lot of damage from anything really. I don't think he has any real weaknesses. For the most part here, we're going for straight melee. We go for some jump hits, try to break his poise, and then when we do, we go for some big stun attack, and we repeat this process over and over again until we eventually kill Moog. I then parkour my way down to the graves to pick up the Inescapable Frenzy, which gives me a very good situational attack that only works on NPCs / unwashed players. But now that I am down here, I can finish up Hayate's questline, so we get naked and get touched by the two fingers. Proceed to talk to her, which then turns into us burning her to death. But she leaves us behind the Frenzied Flame seal, which boosts Frenzied Flame incantations. And then when we sit down at the Grace, Melina disowns us, as you can see here.
You have inherited the Frenzied Flame. A pity. You are no longer fit. Our journey together ends here. And remember, should you rise as the Lord of Chaos, I will kill you. As sure as night follows day, such is my duty. For allowing you the strength of runes. Goodbye, my companion. Goodbye, Torrent.
Goodbye, my favorite maiden. After getting disowned, we then upgrade our newly acquired seal. Now it was time for the mountaintop of the giants. We make our way over to the Lord's contender Everjail, which Vike resides in. After giving Vike a kiss, we duel. This Vike has mastered lightning, and we have the same sort of moveset for the most part, except he has these lightning attacks. He kills me as I land my Frenzy Flame thrust, and he ends up burning to death, giving me the armor that I'll be using for the rest of the run, the fingerprint armor. Now that we have our drip, it was time to take on the Fire Giant. I buff near the entrance, ride over to the Fire Giant, and start using the Flame of Frenzy on his foot as it deals some pretty good damage. I then go for some jump hits. This eventually breaks his poise, and when it does, I go for the Flame of Frenzy again, and this goes from a poise break into an ankle guard break. And now that his ankle guard was broken, it was just a matter of chasing him around and spamming the Flame of Frenzy, as it does the highest DPS and the most poise damage by far out of everything in my kit. Eventually we end up getting a nice poise break that pushes us into phase 2 after flurries of jump hits and a final Frenzy Flame. Once in phase 2, I quickly used the Howl of Shabriri to rebuff myself. Then it was just about getting close enough to him, dealing the Flame of Frenzy damage, and because it was a lot harder, his weak point being his hands for the most part, I just stuck with being close to his body, and whenever I saw the opportunity, I would go for the Flame of Frenzy attack. After a lot of patience, I eventually ended up killing the Fire Giant, and this fight also was down to the wire as I had no FP or HP pots, and it came down to just me poking at him until he died. After that massive W, boss man, we head to the top of the forge, but because Melina abandoned us, she wasn't gonna be the one to light the erdtree ablaze. We would have to do it ourselves. After diving into the flames, we wake up in Farum Azula. Before we make our way to the godskin duo, I needed to grab another talisman. Since picking up that fingerprint armor, our madness meter has decreased significantly, which means we are more prone to give ourselves madness. The only way to fix that was with a specific talisman, but that talisman is in Nokron, so it was time to start the festival and fight Radon to make it down to Nokron. We start the Radon fight by running backwards until he can no longer see us. Once we do this, we buff ourselves and ride into battle. Because we ran back and he wasn't out of the range, he won't shoot at us anymore, he'll just run straight at us. We connect a huge Flame of Frenzy into a Frenzy Flame thrust. We do a lot of damage, but we also take a lot of damage, so I try to get behind or under Radon to get off my Flame of Frenzy. We then send him into phase 2. He goes for a jump attack, which gives us a huge opening, and that opening turns into a poise break, which we take advantage of and use it to get some big damage in. We then go for the Frenzy Flame thrust to finish off Radon. Now that Radon was dead, we can make it down to Nokron, but before we could get to the talisman, we had to fight ourselves. So after giving ourselves Death's Kiss, we make our way down to grab the Clarifying Horn Charm +1, which raises our focus focus by 140. Focus is the stat that controls the meters of both sleep and madness, so this talisman will make it so we take a lot longer to get madness. Now that we have this, it was time for the godskin duo. This fight was probably the longest by far because I found the most efficient way to deal damage was through the pillars. Because they were meant to be broken, they weren't solid, so I could shoot my flame of frenzy through the tops of them and I hit the duo on the other side. So my game plan was to kite, get into a good position, and let it rain on them. I would then run to the other side and repeat this process. It got really dangerous when one of them would phase shift because then they would have access to breaking the top of the pillars. It would give them an opportunity to throw their black flame at me and potentially hit me. While doing this, I wasn't managing my madness because every time I got madness, I would gain the 10% buff from the helmet, so I would just allow it to happen. I would also take advantage of the fatty going for a sonic phase. As he was rolling at me, he gets stuck on the pillars, allowing me to rain it down on him, usually causing a poise break. Whenever I had fatty killed and it was just the apostle, I would just reserve my FP and go for melee, as I was more confident getting hits off on his moveset and not the other one. But for the majority of the fight, it was just me running away and spamming the flame of frenzy, until eventually I would find myself into a 1v1 with the apostle, and when he was summoning his friends, I would be able to poke him to death and end the godskin duo. Now that the duo is dead, I would go pick up this ancient dragon somber smithing stone, allowing me to level up one of my weapons to max. I choose the seal, as for the most part I was relying more on incantations to deal the majority of my damage. Onto Maliketh. This fight during the first phase, I would use a similar strategy that I just used on the godskin duo fight. I would head over to this pillars over here, and because Frenzy Flame Thrust does a spread fire attack, I would use this to my advantage to damage the clergyman through the pillar, but I was soon to find out that he could also damage me back. This part of the fight was pretty straightforward, as I would just avoid him and keep hitting him through the pillar until he died. Now into phase 2, Maliketh. Maliketh wasn't that easy, unfortunately, as usual, but whenever I saw an opening, I would go for the Frenzy Flame Thrust or single hit. I was mostly trying for a poise break, as I felt that would be the most effective way to beat him. If I get one off, I feel like I could just kill him straight up with the Flame of Frenzy damage, so I would use any opportunity I got to go for jump hits or Frenzy Flame Thrust. He dealt a lot of damage back, so I had to be very careful with my timing, because one slip up could cost me a life, as it did many times before. Thus, the fight came down to the wire, as I had used all of my pots, and we finally took out Maliketh with one final jump hit. We then make our way over to the Ashen Capital and grab the good old reliable erdtree's favor +2. After that, it was time to smooch up Sir Gideon. He seemed to max out his asexual stat because he didn't get infatuated after 2 smooches, so I had to give him one single poke to finish him off. Onto Godfrey. I hit the buffs up before entering the arena, then because he would slow walk towards me, I would use this to fire off some Frenzied Flame bursts, which were doing nearly 1000 damage per burst. I would spam this until he would get really close. In an ideal world, he would throw his axe at me and I would counter it with a thrust, but this time he just ran at me, so I took this opportunity to get some space and kept spamming Frenzied bursts, because if he was just going to slow walk after me, I was going to take advantage of it. But once he got into his second phase, I'll call it enraged phase, I mainly relied on melee, as he gets super aggressive and could attack me anywhere in the arena with his large stomps, until I eventually summoned the Horaloo in him. Now, Horaloo caused me so much pain and suffering because he was super aggressive, and at this point I was severely underleveled, but that's just the average challenge run for you. Whenever he went for the big old earthquake attack, I would run away and use the Frenzied Burst. Most of my openings for this fight would be me utilizing whenever he would go for his grab attack, and I would dodge it, getting off one singular hit, running away like a little baby and waiting for the same opening again, until after a long fought battle, he tries to grope me one last time, and I go for the double poke and I kill him with no flasks in hand. All of these fights were super close. Now onto the final boss, Radagon and the Elden Beast. This fight starts off with me hitting him with a Frenzied Flame Thrust. After that, it was down to pure dodging and getting into pokes, as I had no time at all to get any incantations in. I would just be trying to deal as much damage as possible and try to get some poise breaks, constantly berating him with attacks. This wasn't easy though, as he likes to get super aggressive. I do get some clutch poise breaks, and after the initial big attack, I sneak in a Frenzy Flame Thrust in. I repeat this process until I kill Radagon. Now this was the easy part. Now onto the Elden Beast. Because he uses the same cookie cutter intro attack, I can just run at him and poke him until he goes for the Dragon Breath, and then I can sneak behind him and get off a Flame of Frenzy. Elden Beast gave me a lot more opportunities to use my incantations, so I did just that, and any opportunity I got, I would spam the Flame of Frenzy. But this fight is a long one, because it is still the Elden Beast, and he likes to play hide and go fetch, which nobody is a fan of. Nobody wants to fucking fetch you, Mr. Elden Beast. But because some of you commenters taught me how, I would be able to now manipulate the ring attack to where he would pop up right beside me. This would allow me to get an extra hit or 2 off before he'd swim away, but I'm still happy that I was able to do that maneuver. And if you want to know how, basically you just turn 180 when he goes for the ring, and you just sprint in that direction, don't stop, he will basically pop up beside you, and sometimes even like behind you, because you have ran so far. So we spam Frenzy Flame and get a poise break and spam it for some more. I was out of FP pots at this point, so it was only what I had in my bar, so I had to try not to waste any of it by missing the Flame of Frenzy, so I'd get real close and try to use the Flame of Frenzy. Then he gets me with some range attacks, and I was out of healing pots as well. This was not looking good, as he still had a massive chunk of HP left, but thankfully the Flame of Frenzy is overpowered, and I was able to quickly quickly drain his massive HP bar. He goes for a second round of rings, and I was able to be right beside him due to the manipulation from before, and then chase him down as to make sure not to mess up my dodging. I was now getting low, and I was getting desperate, sacrificing crucial HP for damage until I run out of FP with one final flame of frenzy, and we trade kills. Giving me the victory and claiming myself as the Lord of Chaos, a decision that would make Melina very unhappy.
Lord of Frenzied Flame. I will seek you as far as you may travel. To deliver you what is yours. Destined death.
That is all I have for you guys today. We are now the Lord of Chaos. We beat the game with Madness, we beat the game with Rot, and we beat the game with Frostbite. I'm trying to be the Thanos of the status effects and do a run with each one. Gonna need some suggestions though for Bleed, because that one just seems a little overpowered as is, so let me know how I could twist that to make it a little bit more fair, you know? But yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. I'll see you in the next video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and watch my other videos. I'll see you in the next video. Later.